Hey everyone, I'm Charting Man Dan with the Chart Guys. I've been trading cannabis stocks for the last 13 years, and in this video we're going to check in on the sector and where we stand. Weekly consolidation is underway. Higher lows are the most likely scenario, and we'll check out what we need to see shape up for the bulls to take back over. All right, so real quick check in on the fundamentals first. This is going to be way more about the technicals, but we had the markup pass in the Senate. We have the potential of a government shutdown looming, and so now looking forward, when do we get information from the DEA about Schedule 3? That can happen tomorrow, or it can happen in 6 months. There is no timeline whatsoever. Many people, myself included, feel like the administration is likely going to hold it until closer to the election to try and coast off of that momentum, but we don't know. So on any given day, probability is low that that headline is coming out. So that's one thing in favor of the bears, is the time in between headlines that catalyze the sector. And so we now look to safe banking. And again, we had the Senate markup pass. And so now, if the government were to shut down, that would obviously delay things. And you also are going to have the narrative, whenever you have them bringing up this bill, the opposers are going to say, there's so many more important things to talk about. Why are we talking about cannabis right now? And that's going to be a narrative as well. But there's still steps to go. We got to go to the Senate. We got to go to the House. And people are less confident about the House this time around compared to the other 7 times or whatever it's been. So essentially, I'm trading this sector ignoring the headlines. And I know a lot of you say that's absolutely crazy because it's all you're looking at is the headlines. And it's just different trading styles. You're looking perhaps to invest. I'm looking to trade the volatility in the meantime. And as we talked about in the video 2 weeks ago, the setup was there to favor bears. We had a lull in any expected headlines. We knew when the markup vote was. We knew there was a window of time in between. And the bears took advantage of that lack of headlines into this bigger picture consolidation. And it's also the broader market. Look at 2 weeks ago. The NASDAQ and the S&P 500 had their weakest week in 5 or 6 weeks. And it's not a coincidence that the weakest week aligned with the start of weekly consolidation in MSOS and a lot of these other names when the broader market was pulling back. Just think of, yes, the correlations are less significant in the sense that for MSOS, these names are traded on the OTC. You have something like Tesla. Tesla has a ton of automated bots and algos that are trading directly based off of what the NASDAQ is doing. They're placing automated trades based on that. And there's much less of that going on because of the OTC exposure. You don't have the same kind of bots and algos thrown around millions of dollars on the OTC. So the correlation is less significant in that regard. We're not doing tick for tick the same thing on the 5-minute chart like Tesla does with QQQ, but sentiment. So sentiment is definitely key. And we're going to look at that in the psychedelic space at the end of this video. But, if you're seeing names like Amazon and Apple being sold off, then that is showing some risk off in the market. And obviously the cannabis and psychedelic sectors only thrive in risk-on environments. And so we have to keep an eye on this bigger picture, because if the broader market were to stay weak into the end of this year, it is going to have an impact on the willingness of traders and investors to put their money in the highest risk, highest reward sectors that are cannabis and psychedelics. So we know that the weekly higher lows are the most likely result of this consolidation. And it's just a question of, is it going to form here, or are we going to see another leg down before it forms? And this is with regards to all names, but we're positioned differently. And one way to measure comparatively of individual names is retracement size. I look at MSOS and say, okay, we've given back roughly 45% of this move at this point. And you compare that to CGC, and it's a night and day difference. CGC has given back a lot more. CGC at this point, retracement is 70 or 75%. So again, very different. But with regards to MSOS, right now we have a battle. And I always like analogies with trading. And you got the bulls and the bears, we know that analogy, but they're literally digging in their trenches. The bulls are defending the 760s, the bears are defending the 830s. And if you look at 762, that level came into play on Thursday and bulls defended it, but the bears are doing a good job as well. And the bears are defending, on Wednesday we had the reaction to that vote. And, a lot of people don't understand, why are we dropping on that reaction? And again, watch the Chart Guys video correlations, Google that. But there were a lot of traders that I know that were shorting that news. We halted on MSOS, and as MSOS was halted, you looked at the names that were not halted. Some of the OTC names, CGC, TLRY, they were fading, which increases the probability that MSOS would fade as well. And so when the halt opened up, a lot of people shorted it, and then you had the bears playing defense. Look at this defense at 839 to 830. We rejected on the bounce attempt after the initial profit taking. We rejected again in the afternoon. We rejected on Thursday. We rejected on Friday. So this is training the bears short the 830s as long as it keeps working. And the bulls are buying the 760s, 770s as long as it keeps working. There was a support zone in the 790s that has been lost. So I'm not confident that the bulls can hold 760. I do not have high conviction that this is the weekly high or low. I'm well aware that it could be. I'll say I'm going with 38% chance that this is a weekly high or low at 762. But I know that we're not positioned well compared to the broader market in the sense that SPY had a multiple day bounce and then topped out on Friday into some pullback. So if the S&P 500 confirms a daily lower high and lower low this coming week, then my confidence goes extremely high that MSOS is going to break 762. So what I'm doing from the sideline here is watching patiently. If the bulls can give me a reason to play off of 762 as a support level with my stop loss, I will do so, but I don't have that conviction yet. If we break 762, the daily downtrend confirms, and the next target will be weekly EMA 12, which will be right around the low $7 range. And so that's when I'll start keeping an eye out for a potential re-entry back into some longer-term swing positions for a weekly high or low. So that's all I care about right now is 830s. It's a zone. 880 if we get over that zone, and 762 support. Where's support if 762 breaks? We didn't establish support on the way up. There's no clear levels. I'm looking at 7 psychological is the next level after 762. So we'll watch the first couple of days and see where we stand. The bigger picture for the individual names, there's two ways to measure it. Again, the retracement size on the weekly, but also as I showed you before, divide the individual name by MSOS on the chart. And we can see GTBIF is approaching the strongest it's ever been compared to MSOS. And you compare that to TCNNF divided by MSOS, and we can see that it's not close to the strongest it's been. So that's a really easy way to say GTBIF is clearly much stronger than TCNNF. You can also just look at the individual charts. GTBIF, the most important level is the low of consolidation to this point of 1016, and we're not testing that level right now. Whereas if you look at TCNNF, it is testing the low, and if you look at CRLBF, we've been dropping to lower lows. We already hit the lower low Thursday. So CRLBF clearly weaker than GTBIF on this consolidation. And we have a daily downtrend guide, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low. The bulls must confirm a daily uptrend to have confidence that a weekly higher low is shaping up. So if you're hitting lower highs and lower lows, you're obviously not shaping up that daily uptrend. Canadian names sold off much harder. And again, in the videos during the euphoria, I was talking about got to use stops because there's going to be new bag holders created on this wave. I didn't know when it was going to happen. Knew that an easy 30% pullback was coming. At this point, we're now down almost 50. We're over 50%. So 60% pullback at this point. And what's the most likely scenario now? And again, the dilution on CGC and ACB, as I keep talking about Google ChartGuys dilution, I have a video about it where I literally use ACB as the example because in my opinion, ACB is in a bit of a death spiral with its dilution cycle, which is very common in penny stocks. Anyways, at this point, because of its retracement size, CGC, we're still looking for a higher low, but then bears will be all over a weekly lower high as a result of the next bounce because we know we can bounce 100% and still not be where we came from. Whoops. Twitter. So we can bounce 100% and still not be where we came from. So an equilibrium becomes the most likely scenario. Daily time frame, trying to confirm a fresh low, 76 support, bulls defending it Thursday and Friday, but we're knocking on the door. If 76 breaks, I'm looking down at 66. There's 736 and then 66 as the next two levels. And again, it's just your standard downtrend. We knew the daily lower high was most likely here. There's your lower low. We knew the daily lower high was most likely here. Look at the hourly. And again, I'm all over Twitter posting these charts and talking about it. It's easy in these videos to look back in hindsight, but after Tuesday's trading, I said watch for the head and shoulders and an hourly lower high being most likely. Head and shoulders confirms. We knew that was a likely pattern because daily lower high was the most likely scenario. If I know a daily lower high is most likely, I zoom into the hourly and I look for signs of a bearish pattern that affirm to me that that is shaping up. So now it's just a question of, do we break 76 and keep the daily downtrend going? We're not going to set a weekly high or low as long as we're in a daily downtrend. We have to see the bulls confirm a trend change to shift momentum. ACB, again, same deal. All you got to do is scroll back to every short squeeze pop. This time it's different, headlines, yada, yada. Charts are not saying it's different for ACB. The volume was different, absolutely, but we gave it back. We gave the move back. These names are for trading, not for holding, in my opinion. And so, again, we're going to look for a higher low compared to 43 cents where we came from, but I will not be shocked if ACB continues a long-term downtrend. Tons of space for the weekly lower high. They had dilution news on Thursday for the gap down. Anything under 816 is just a lower high. And again, in the past videos, I talked about how bears are salivating for this move to top out because it's just a reload point for them, for these names that have poor share structures and poor financials. TLRY has been a lead bear as well. Daily downtrend confirmed way back on September 13th, followed through, lower high, double top at 263. Bears getting rewarded for top fishing resistance, lower low. So anything under 263 is just a daily lower high. Weekly time frame. If we hold support of 222, which is approaching, we held it by 4 pennies this past week. Now we got to watch a weekly head and shoulders to potentially be shaping up. So we'll talk about that, in a couple weeks if we get a weekly bounce going. But for now, it's the daily downtrend that is our guide. And it's all about 222 support here in the short term. So again, we have to remember, a lot of people are long-term mindset, I'm holding, but still watching the price on a daily basis. And that is psychologically unhealthy. But I understand the urge to do so. Just be aware that with so much time in between headlines, time is on the bears' side in this sector. And again, the risk is for the bears that a headline comes out that leads to a massive short squeeze. And that's definitely something to be aware of. But again, probabilities on any given day that a headline is coming out are fairly low. And so the bears are going to take advantage of the in-between time for these macro headlines that we're keeping an eye out for. Psychedelic space. So overall, bears following through in a big way. CMPS, we were watching this tightening range to see if the bulls could break, but they didn't. So back to patiently watching because we are now at the lowest levels that we've seen in months, and we're testing the low of the year, 725. Actually, 697 was the low right at the start of the year, but you get the idea. The bears are in complete control, and we could see this shaping up. We were cautious. Couldn't say we're about to collapse, but I could say bull breaks are lacking follow through. This is a rising wedge pattern, and if this rising wedge breaks bear, it's just a weekly lower high being set compared to 1092. And then we just collapsed on very high bear volume, and we've closed lower than the open 11 days in a row. It's just complete bear control. What has happened over the last 2 weeks? That's the 2 weeks of the broader market consolidation. So again, if the broader market is selling off Apple and Amazon and not confident in the biggest, strongest names, they're not going to be putting their money in the highest risk, highest reward penny stock sector. And so MNMD, weekly lower high, confirmed weekly downtrend, and testing the lowest levels of the year. They're approaching. So bears are back in absolute complete control of the psychedelic space. That said, CYBN did see a really big pump here. Just got to be cautious of the pump and dump. We're looking for the daily higher. Why am I able to use charts to make money? Watch CYBN and go look at CGC. What's the difference here? We're now at this point right here where we're looking for a daily high or low as most likely, but because of the retracement size, we will also be looking for the daily lower high. And so CYBN is looking for the daily high or low, absolutely. We're then going to look for the lower high and watch to see if the bears confirm the daily downtrend. If they do, we'll be following the same exact path that Cannabis was on. For the big pump, you top out, you look for the higher low initially, but because of the retracement size, you set the lower high. If you confirm the daily downtrend, you zoom out because the weekly consolidation is then underway, and then you scout a weekly high or low. And in Cannabis, we're in the scout the weekly high or low phase, and in CYBN, it still has a way to go here, a ways to go. If you're going to see the most likely scenario not take place, it has to be on unusual volume. So if we're going to head to a higher high, it's not going to happen without really high bull volume. In the absence of unusual bull volume, scout the lower high to be the result of the bounce. And key support now in the short term, 48 cents. And key resistance, 54. It's still a battle. Bulls still got to get over 54 for the daily bounce to be underway. But let's see how it plays out and whether it follows the same path the Cannabis has already laid forth. Daily downtrends are our guides. MSOS has very clear support and resistance zones in the short term. Eventually, weekly higher lows are the most likely scenario, but patiently watching for how they're going to shape up and watching the broader market sentiment, knowing the impact that it has on these very high risk, high reward sectors. Feel free to ask any questions. As always, I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Do good things.